Good morning, everyone, and happy Easter, happy Passover. Welcome to News Center Maine's Political Brew for this Easter Sunday. Glad you could be with us, along with Ray Richardson of WLOB Radio and attorney and longtime co-host of the WGAN Morning News, Ken Altshuler. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Good being here.
Nice to see you both.
Lots of things going on, especially as the legislature winds down in just the next few days. First, the Appropriations Committee has unanimously approved a supplemental budget that includes the governor's proposal to send checks for $850 to more than 850,000 Mainers. Not many changes made from the governor's original proposal. This process, Ken, was unusually quiet and collaborative, especially in an election year. How did this happen?
That's a great question. I would normally say it's because of the Democratic majority, but I don't want to get Ray's ire up too quickly in this conversation. I think that, frankly, COVID has really, I think, changed a lot of people. I think have made people more collaborative. I think some of the things that, for example, I'm sure we'll talk about the checks that will be sent to Maine citizens. Republicans were proponents of that. So I think there was a lot of legislation that both parties embraced. And I just think that there's kind of a anti-feeling here in Maine, contrary to what we see in Washington, D.C., where there's so much infighting. Sometimes Maine is contrary to that. And Maine has always been kind of an independent state. And I think we find legislators kind of breaking the mold and going their own way. And I think it's great. I think the leadership has been good. I think the leadership on both sides has encouraged collaboration rather than conflict. And I think it's a real credit to Maine that we see that kind of behavior.
What do you make of it, Ray?
I think it's a couple of things. One, as you know, Republicans didn't really want the checks. They wanted a tax cut. But the truth is they had no real power as they're in the extreme minority up in Augusta. I also think it's an election year, and right now is not a time to be wrangling. Now is the time to get out and get the legislature out of town and get on with the campaigns, because this is going to be a very contentious campaign. I think everybody knows it. And those that are running again in the legislature just want to get out and start doing the campaigning again.
A few days ago, the House advanced the bill to give Maine's Native American tribes far more control over their future. It would restore sovereignty to the Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Micmac, and Maliseet tribes. It covers their right to control most of what happens on tribal land, from taxes and environmental issues to many criminal and other laws. Opponents say that makes too many uncertainties about possibly creating laws on tribal lands that could conflict with neighboring communities. Ray, the governor has indicated she disagrees with parts of this bill and will likely veto it. Do you think she should?
No, I don't. I'll tell you why. I'm quite familiar with the Land Claim Act of 1980. Tom Tureen, who was a lead attorney on it a couple of decades ago, I guess I had a chance to really talk to him and understand from his perspective why that was important. Personally, I don't like this whole idea philosophically that the tribes are sovereign around the country. We're Americans, and I think it's, in that regard, it's divisive. But look, we've decided to do it this way. Maine is an outlier, and there's no reason that the Maine tribes that are federally recognized should be treated differently than tribes around the country. I have no problem with having tribal sovereignty because we've decided to do it this way. I wish we didn't. Wish we were all united as Americans, but I have great respect for the Native Americans. I'm sure they can conduct themselves in the state of Maine as they've done around the country, and I think the governor should sign the bill.
I agree with Ray. The Land Act of 1980 was product of that time. And a lot of people say, well, it's a deal, let's keep it. But there's been over 100 federal legislation that has passed that have addressed sovereign Indian nations that the Maine tribes can't benefit from because of this act. And so they've lost out on a lot of federal aid and a lot of things that would improve their lot. I think that we can look back historically. I'm a strong proponent of frankly, disgust at how the American government in the 19th century, and that's our ancestors, and we're not responsible for that, but treated the Native Americans. And it's not a matter of owing them, but I do think we owe them the right to advance their tribes in the way they see fit. I'm not sure what Janet thinks is going to be confusing about this legislation. I have to see her specific reasons, but I support what's being done for the tribes. I applaud the Senate, for the House for doing that. I hope the Senate follows through on that. And I want to see why Janet feels a need to veto any portion of it for any reason.
Now, the tribes also have a stake in the effort to allow sports betting in Maine. There are a couple of competing proposals over how much of a share of mobile betting the tribes would get. The casinos want to make sure they get a piece of that action as well. Ken, what's the right solution here?
Betting has, the horse has been left out of the barn already. I mean, we're not going to reverse what's happening nationwide. You can go betting online anywhere you want. So to suggest we have the sanctity about not having betting, I'm not really crazy about the fact that the state has so much control. And we talk about Indian rights, whether or not there should be casinos on Indian land. But I think certainly sports betting is coming. I know Governor Mills had some objections to it. I think that the legislature is addressing that. I support it. I'm not a big fan of betting. I'm not a gambler. I'm not a bettor, but it's part of American culture. And to deprive Indian tribes or Maine citizens, if they want to bet, which you can already do online, I think it's short-sighted.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I should disclose the Big Jab sports station is my sister station. We work for the same radio group. They're going to benefit from this, obviously, with a lot of sports advertising if this happens. That's not the reason I'm for this. Look, we've made the decision on gambling in the state of Maine. We have 2 casinos here. There have been other efforts to bring it. I think Maine handled it wrong from the very beginning. I thought we should have had a competitive bid process, let Maine people decide whether we wanted gambling. And if the answer was yes, had the state put out an RFP with criteria, those that qualified could bid on gambling license. But I don't really understand what the difference is between allowing sports betting and have a casino. It just seems like to me that you're either pregnant or you're not. You're never kind of pregnant.
Good way to put it. Former Congressman Bruce Poliquin has raised nearly $2 million for his campaign to win back that 2nd District seat. He has almost $1.9 million cash on hand, but he trails Congressman Jared Golden, who has taken in almost $3 million, including over $635,000 in just the first quarter of this year, and he has about $1.7 million on hand. Ray, what does all of this tell you?
Well, obviously, it's going to be a very competitive race, and a lot of money is going to be spent on advertising on radio, TV, and I'm grateful for that, just so we're clear. I'm a little surprised with the amount of money that Jared Golden has raised and the burn rate. He has less cash on hand than Bruce Poliquin does, but he's raised overall significantly more money, and it just seems odd because there's not a lot of public activity with the Golden campaign right now. Look, these guys have both been congressmen. They know what the deal is. There are a lot of outside groups that are going to jump into the state of Maine and try to convince people of one thing or another. I think the money chase isn't going to be the big issue. I think what the big issue will be is whose message best connects with the 2nd District. It's a more conservative district in the state of Maine. I think that bodes well for Bruce. And unfortunately for Jared Golden, this appears to be a very anti-democratic year.
What do you think, Ken?
Well, unfortunately, I agree with Ray in part. I've been predicting this for a number of months, that it's going to be an unpleasant November for Democrats. Right or wrong, like it or not, the trend is certainly against Democrats, and normally in an off-election year, but in particularly this year. And the House, I believe, is going to probably fall to the Republicans. I think there's an outside chance that the Senate will remain at least even or Democratic controlled. That being said, Jared Golden's a very popular representative. The money's coming in because they're going to need it, because he's facing an onslaught of Republican trends here in the United States. And therefore, and Bruce Poliquin's a former congressman. He's well experienced in politics. He's a formidable candidate. So Jared Golden's going to need that money, even though the most vulnerable time for a congressman is certainly the first re-election, and he won that, but it was a weak candidate. So I think he needs to be prepared, and I think Jared Golden could lose just because of the political mood in the country.
Interesting scenario setting up in the fall. Of course, we have Paul LePage and Janet Mills, essentially 2 incumbents running against each other for governor. That's the way this can be seen. And LePage himself could become a double dipper if he's elected to another term. He already collects a pension for his 8 years as governor. Should he forego that if he's once again being paid to be the governor, Ken?
Well, yes and no. I have no problem with anybody getting a legal pension. And if Paul LePage could get 2 pensions, more power to him. I wish I could do that. But he did say he had some very negative statements about double dippers. He made some very negative comments, and that's going to be held against him if he does it. So, yes, he should decline to take it for political reasons. For personal reasons, he should not. I have no problem either way. But it's you hoist it on your own petard if you criticize something and then do it yourself a few years later.
Yeah, Ray, he's quoted as saying people who are double dippers suffer from a character flaw. They called it unconscionable and disgusting. Of course, he'll probably point out that Governor Janet Mills gets a pension for her service as Attorney General.
Right. So my answer is a little different. I think this story, frankly, is one of the reasons there's such distrust by the people of the media in this state and this country. This is such a non-story, and I think it was just an opportunity for the Center for Public Interest Reporting, which claims to be nonpartisan. I know it ran in the Press Herald, to take a shot at LePage. He's not governor yet. I guess they're assuming he's going to win. I assume he's going to win, and that'll be a question. The governor will do what's right. I think he's a man that has a long history of doing what he believes to be is right. And if he thinks double dipping is wrong, then he won't take that second pension. He won't take the pension while he's governor. But this is such a non-story. And I said this the other day on my program when it came out. I just can't believe that this story was made up and manufactured. This is a story that appears in January, not in April.
Good point. Let's shift our attention to national and international affairs. President Biden, for the first time, has referred to Russia's invasion of Ukraine as genocide. Ray, does that have any impact on how all of this plays out?
Well, I certainly hope that it does. President Biden is using the right words, but his actions aren't backing it up. He called Putin a war criminal recently, and now he's talking about genocide, which is a very harsh and difficult word, but it is going on there. Retired Marine Colonel Andy Bain was on with me last week live from just outside of Kyiv. And one of the things he was talking about is one of the largest weapons warehouses just over the border in Poland. He said he cannot understand why we aren't facilitating those weapons to get into the hands of heroic Ukrainians more quickly. You know, you recall the Ukrainians gave up their nuclear weapons in 1994 with the Budapest Memorandum. The United States, Great Britain, and oddly enough, the Russian Federation agreed to protect them and supply them with weapons if they were attacked. I feel personally that we are not living up to our agreement. I know there's an $850 million weapons cache that's headed their way, but we're 2 months into this. We keep waiting. This thing could be over.
Ken, is calling it genocide significant in any way other than rhetoric?
It is. And the president of Ukraine said it is, because it's calling attention on the top level that this is genocide and Putin is a war criminal. I disagree with Ray. Joe Biden is not handling it well. I keep asking people, what else do you want him to do? He can't put boots on the ground. We know that. He can't do flyovers. We know that. He's doing everything he can to support the Ukrainian people. And I think he's done a very good job. And it's not his job to tell Poland what to do. Poland is in a position to help as they can. We are giving plenty of money and facilitating it. But I think from a symbolic point of view, call Putin what he is. And I applaud Joe Biden for that. And I applaud Joe Biden on not backing off on his discussions about they got to take out this guy. And he got a lot of criticism for it. And then he doubled down on it. And good for him. I agree with him.
I just want to respond to that just very quickly. I completely agree what he said, being a war criminal and this is genocide. Those are very difficult words. And when they're used, they have to have something to back it up. Ken, let's not forget, the Polish people the Poland government wanted to give Ukraine 70 MiGs, and President Biden told them not to do it. Now, I realize they're a sovereign nation, but he's also the leader of the world. And when he speaks, it's supposed to have meaning. I just think we're dragging our heels on giving them the proper weapons so they can defend themselves.
Well, there's also a debate of whether actually Poland offered to do that. There is some conflicting evidence about that, Ray.
Back in Washington, Sen Collins and other Republican senators are urging the Biden administration to extend the Title 42 order, which was issued by the Centers for Disease Control, which permits the immediate expulsion of immigrants who illegally attempt to cross the southern border. It was done in response to COVID, of course. The senators are saying that rescinding the order during a border crisis and with knowledge of a building surge of illegal immigrants presents a serious threat to public safety. And Ken, even a few Democrats have been pushing back on this proposal, especially those who are worried about their reelection.
They have. And this is so ironic because you have Republicans who say, you know, the pandemic was not a big deal and it's all better now, but we should keep Title 42, which was a health policy. It's a CDC policy. It's the Surgeon General's policy. Now, from a political point of view, I absolutely agree, because there's going to be an influx of illegal aliens. We do not yet have a comprehensive immigration policy. We haven't had one for decades now, and no matter what we say about it, we never have that happen. That being said, Title 42 has to stay into place for a political reason, but let's not lose sight of the fact that it is actually a health policy and not a political policy.
I agree. It is a health policy, and I believe it should stay in place. We're seeing a dramatic number of people come across our border illegally. Look, China has locked down over the BA2. Fauci walked it back later in the week, but he came out to say, you know, we could be looking at much more restrictive times here in this country. And then he walked it back and said it was an individual responsibility. I think at a time when we had 2 million people that we know of come across our border illegally last year, the Border Patrol says another 350 to 500,000 have come across that they did not engage. This policy is a good policy, and we should keep it in place. Secretary Mayorkas said that it was misused when it was applied, but I don't see that at all. Either COVID is a health crisis or it's not. I believe that it is. I had it. It almost got me. And I think until this is really over, we need to keep it in place.
All right, let's wrap up with our winners and losers in politics. And Ken, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm going to be a broken record. Let me apologize. But the winners of the week remain the Ukrainian people. I believe they sank the Russian ship. What an incredible achievement for a country like that. They forestalled the Russian invasion. The Russians are brutish, and the Ukrainians have stood tall and proud in the face of this adversity. It's amazing to me. It is a great symbolic act of a united people, and I really applaud them. They will continue to be, in my eyes, not only the winners, but the heroes of the week. The villain of the week is going to be Vladimir Putin. He's going to go down for this. The sooner, the better. But he is looking worse and worse. Russia's looking worse and worse. He's a war criminal. Whether they ever prosecute him or not will be another question, but he will remain the loser of the week until he withdraws from Ukraine.
And Ray.
I have no villains, but I have 2 winners. Pat, you and I discussed this one on Thursday. This spiffy haircut that I'm wearing today, my son Tripp cut my hair. My son Tripp represents a lot of people in this country who, because of COVID, they took some time to do self-reflection and decided what they really wanted to do with their lives. Tripp left the company that he was with, and he's gone to barber school, and he's going to be a barber later this summer. And so for me, I'm proud of him. He's my son, but I'm also, for the people out there that really reevaluated their lives, they're big winners. And of course, the second winner is the entire people of the world. We're here on Easter today. For Christians, it's about a resurrected Savior who allows us to have eternal salvation with him in heaven. And so anybody that chooses to accept that is a winner.
And I will just say, Ray, about your haircut, I think your son is going to be an excellent barber.
Thank you so much.
Ray, I can agree about that as well.
I love it.
Thank you both. Happy Easter, everyone. And thank you for being with us on New Center Maine's Political Brew. We'll see you next time. New Center Maine is back after this.